alaikum, peace be upon you. Inshallah, in this video and coming videos if needed, I will try to summarize quickly the rulings pertaining to fasting, and I'll try to go quick so as to shorten the videos and to include as much rulings as we can to cover the main subjects that people encounter during their month of fasting. So as you know, alhamdulillah, month of Ramadan is approaching really quick here, probably by this coming Friday, the year 2020. Fasting, Allah has prescribed it upon Muslims, and all prophets before the Prophet Muhammad also prescribed fasting for his people. As mentioned in the Quran, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Fasting has been made obligatory upon you, just like it has been made obligatory on nations before you. Fasting, the main goal of fasting, according to the verse that prescribed the fasting, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may attain taqwa, means for the person to develop awareness of Allah's watchfulness over him in all aspects of life, during the fasting and outside of the fasting, and for the rest of the year and the rest of his life. And of course, fasting involves sabr. There is sabr because you are adhering to the commandment of Allah and abstaining from the prohibitions of Allah, not to break your fast by eating or drinking or having sexual intercourse or sexual pleasure by ejaculation. And you're also enduring the hardship that happens because of the fasting, such as the thirst and the hunger and some fatigue that happens with that. All these are the three forms of sabr, the three forms of patience that are included in the fasting. Fasting, as we all know as Muslims, starts from the break of the day, from the fajr, from the whiteness that appears in the horizon, al-fajr al-sadiq, the true fajr, not the false fajr that comes before that. And nowadays we have calendars we can go by, but it is best to stick to one calendar so that we don't shift between the different calendars. Some calendars may have difference in minutes, a few minutes at the time of beginning of fasting or time of ending of fasting. So you have to see the most trustworthy calendar based on your research, and you adhere to it strictly with regards to the time you start your fast and the times you end your fast. Since we live in the West and there's no adhan to tell us, and it is not because of the building, we live in cities, most of us, we are not able to see the horizon, the whiteness of the horizon and the sunset very clearly. So better to stick to one calendar and follow it and not to shift between various calendars. An important point: if somebody wakes up at night and he thinks the day has not started yet, he thought it was before Fajr, so he quickly eats and drinks, and then he finds out later that Fajr has actually passed. It may be 10 minutes or half an hour after the Fajr adhan. So what does he do? His fasting is valid because he thought it was before Fajr, and that is with the condition that he was not neglectful. He really, something happened. You think maybe Fajr is 4:30 and it turns out to be 4, just by mistake. Some people can wake up and they're a little bit confused and they think it's before Fajr and eat. Then his fasting is valid. While if somebody is fasting and he thought Maghrib time has come and he did not do the due diligence to know whether or not Maghrib time has come, and he ate, and then he realized that Maghrib, that he had eaten and drinking before the Maghrib, before the sunset by about 5 minutes or so, then his fasting is not valid. Well, the difference is that in the first state, he was in the state where he was allowed to drink all night. So he went according to the original state that he can eat and drink until proven otherwise, which is the start of the day. While in the other state, he was in a state of fasting. So he cannot shift from that state to the state of being able to eat and drink unless he has clear and firm and confirmed proof of that. That is the difference. If somebody, for instance, is fasting and he's in an airplane, and when you go up into an elevation, what happens is the sunset is actually delayed by a minute or two, because you're from an elevation. The sun doesn't set that quickly, so you have to follow the sunset in that situation. You don't go by the timing of the people on earth, on land. You go by the timing that because you are now able to observe sunset, you have to go by that. But let's say you are on land still, you're about to, the plane has not taken off as yet, and the Maghrib time has come, and according to the timing on the land, and you have broken your fast, and then immediately the plane took off, and now you can see the sun hasn't set again, because now you're from an elevation. Your fasting is valid. Your fasting is valid because you followed the timing based on the locality you are in, which is on land. And the Maghrib has come while you are still on land, then you're good. But if the plane then immediately takes off and you find that now you can see the sun again, you are not to be blamed for that. Your fasting is valid. In places where the days are very long, such as when you go very up north, such as in northern Alberta, northern Saskatchewan, northern Canada in general, and or also northern parts of Russia and these kind of countries, the days are very long. But as long as there's a day and night, you have to follow the day and night. You cannot break your fast before sunset. You cannot do that. But if you're in a situation or a place where there is no day and night, it is completely daytime for several months and then nighttime for several months, then you have to go by the timing of the closest city that has a day and night. For instance, if you are in the Northwestern Territories and it is daytime for the 24 hours, then you have to seek the time of the closest city that has a day and night. Yes, the days will be very long, and we have to try to endure as much as we can. Of course, if somebody is not able to, then he would fall under the category of the people who are weak or sick. Then that's a different ruling that will come later on. But as long as the person is able to, even if there's minor hardship, he has to endure that. As long as he's not getting sick from the length of the day. But if he's actually getting sick or fainting, that kind of person would fall under the category of the people who are sick, who are allowed to break their fast and then make up for it some other time when the days are shorter. We will get to that in a later video. But as long as there's day and night, we are obligated to fast and follow the sunset and the sunrise. Of course, fasting is only obligatory on somebody who is a Muslim, who is an adult. Children are not obligated to fast, but families are encouraged to train and encourage their children to fast. And if they cannot, then they try to fast part of the day, because at one point they will reach puberty and they will have to fast. So they will have to get some kind of training beforehand. But of course, if it's difficult on the child, if it is difficult on a child, then there's no burden on no burden needs to be placed on that child. But we have to try to train the children, especially the older ones, the ones who are 10, 11, who are almost reaching puberty. Of course, a person has to be sane to fast. If somebody has lost their mind, such as they have become insane from some kind of psychiatric illness, they're not really aware of what they're doing, like schizophrenics or people who have developed very severe dementia, they don't even know their family members, then they have there's no obligation upon them to fast, and there's no obligation on the family to fast on their behalf should they die in that state, or to feed for the days they have not fasted, because there's no obligation on them in the first place. So we don't have to make it up by fasting or by feeding in lieu of that. If somebody lost consciousness, he planned to fast, but he lost consciousness, or he went into surgery and he was anesthetized throughout the course of the day until sunset, then that day would not be counted as a day of fasting. Although he made the intention to fast before sunrise, before Fajr, before the break of the day, but you have to have, because the aql, to be aware is part of the fasting. So if somebody lost their mind for some reason, they lost consciousness throughout the course of the day, they went into a coma, then that day will not be counted as a day of fasting. And when they come out of the coma, then they would have to make up for those days. But let's say somebody made the intention to fast, but then he fell asleep from the Fajr time until Maghrib time. Falling asleep, of course, it's usually nobody does that, but if somebody happens to have not slept for several days, and then he just fell asleep and could not wake up throughout the day. But of course, he missed his salah. That's a bigger problem. But this kind of person, his fasting is valid. His fasting is valid because he did not actually lose his sanity. But if somebody lost consciousness and he regained consciousness even for part of the day, or he was anesthetized for most of the day, or lost consciousness, or lost his mind, became insane, lost his mind for most of the day, but for part of the day, even an hour or half hour or a few minutes of the day, he regained his sanity and his consciousness, then his fasting is valid. That's a very important point. So again, if somebody made the intention to fast and slept throughout the day till Maghrib, his fasting is valid. If he has actually lost his mind by insanity or by losing consciousness, such as going into some form of, he was hit in the head and lost his consciousness for the whole day, or for most of the day, for the whole day, lost consciousness or lost his sanity for the whole day, then the fasting is not valid. Or was anesthetized for the whole day from the break of the day till the sunset, his fasting is not valid. But if any of those people has regained consciousness for even a short part of the day, even a few minutes, then the fasting is valid. Also, a woman can only fast if she is not in a state of menstruation and she is not in a state of postnatal bleeding. In these situations, she is not allowed to fast, and she will have to make up for the days at a later time. And it is haram for her to fast, because some women say, no, how can I miss Ramadan? No, it is haram for you to fast. And if you did fast, you have committed a sin, you've acquired sin, and your fasting is not valid. And let's say a lady was in her menstruation, and her menstruation ended midday. That day would not be counted for her. She would have to make up for that day. Let's say even if her cycle ended an hour after the Fajr time, still that day is not counted, because you would have to get the full day for that day to count, from the break of the day till the sunset, from the Fajr till the Maghrib. So if you miss any part, even a few minutes, even if you miss a minute, then that day does not count. So that lady, this day does not count. Scholars have differed. Should she abstain from eating and drinking and from sexual desire, sexual intercourse and ejaculation for the rest of the day? Or should she live her life normally and eat and drink? There's difference in opinion. This is left to the woman to decide. If it's difficult, some people say better for her to abstain to honor the sacredness of the month. And some people said, no, she is not under the obligation of fasting that day. She can eat and drink. If a woman decided to take birth control pills or take some progesterone injections so as to prevent the menstrual cycle from happening in the first place, so she can fast, that is allowed as long as there's no harm on her. And of course, fasting is only obligatory on those people who are able to do it. People who are sick, people who are extremely old, who cannot do it, cannot fast, they are not obligated to fast, and we will talk about how they can make up for that. And of course, the niyyah. The niyyah is a precondition as well for fasting, and the niyyah has to be made before the break of the day, before the Fajr. You have to have your niyyah. For the month of Ramadan, you make the niyyah from the beginning of the month, before the month starts, that I am fasting this whole month. This way you have protected your niyyah for the whole month. But it is better on top of that to remember the niyyah before each day, and just waking up for suhoor with the intention that you're going to fast, that is a niyyah. You don't have to say the niyyah verbally. Actually, you're not supposed to say the niyyah verbally. This is the beginning of the fasting chapter, and I will continue to discuss all the rulings pertaining to fasting in the coming videos. Thank you very much for following.